Welcome to Live from my drum room. My guest is legendary former drummer of Pearl Jam, Dave ABBRUZZESE. Dave was a member of Pearl Jam from 1991 to 1994 during the band's rise to superstardom and ultimately becoming the biggest band in the world during that time. In this episode, we do a deep dive into Dave's iconic drumming with Pearl Jam and some of his other projects. This was an incredible episode with Dave opening up and bearing his soul about his dismissal from Pearl Jam, creating music, and so many aspects of his life. And I want to thank him for his generosity and inspiration. In fact, we covered so much ground that this episode will be split into two parts. So come along for the ride for part one with Dave ABBRUZZESE. Yeah, finally.
For me, Bobby. It's not time, but did you say my last name? ABBRUZZESE.
ABBRUZZESE. Oh, it's so good to see you, buddy. Thank you for being here.
Oh, complete treat. Complete treat. You know, I've watched so many of your shows and man, I just got to tell you before we get started how much I valued what you're doing. You know, I mean, to get to sit and listen to Angry Dunbar or Sonny Emery or you know, all these legends, you know, just sitting and have chats and so many times I've chimed in during your podcast and then come back around and I, you know, Sonny sends me a message on Facebook Messenger, you know, we reconnect. You know, it's just so cool.
Dave, I don't know what to say because I remember from the first time I started doing these, like when we were all in lockdown, you know, and we were all just stuck. And I remember seeing you putting up a comment and saying, man, this is so great. I'm so enjoying this. And I'm going, holy shit, is that really him? But I knew we were connected on Facebook and I realized it really was you. And you've been such a supporter and such a cheerleader for 6 years now, since 2020. And I thank you, brother. I so appreciate it.
Amazing, you know, I can't help it. It's like, you know, it's like a free opportunity to be inspired, you know, and every single time, there's always something that makes me go, that's why I love the it's cool, man. Hopefully we can do the same for anybody watching today, you know.
I know we will. I know there's so many people excited about having you. Besides me, there are so many people excited to have you here. And I just want to say one more thing too. You know, not admittedly not knowing you well, but knowing what I know about you from our mutual friends. What I always dug about you is that you still you were in this band that was the biggest band in the world and like superstardom, but you were still like this. I don't want to say geeky drummer, but you were still like a curious drummer. Like you never lost your drumming roots of like, man, I want to get a great, yeah, you know, like.
I mean, you know, it's that thing where, you know, all those years of playing, you know, and there's one big difference between drumming and every other instrument that I've found in playing other instruments. You know, I rephrase that. There's one big difference I used to think of, which was that, you know, there was so much pain involved with expressing ourselves, you know, those gigs that were 100 million degrees and the lights were on top of your head and you're acting on blisters, on bloopers and all that stuff. But you know, I realized before I said it that when I play other instruments, I play them just as hard. So maybe, because I hurt myself on guitar too, man.
Well, I get that, man. You're watching you play and hearing you play. It's beyond the physical. It's the passion that's like inside of you that's coming out, man. And then you transfer that to the physical aspect of, you know, hitting the shit out of the drums, which is, yeah, it is spark.
One thing I've learned, John, in the last few years, I mean, I've been doing so many sessions, and as I've gotten older, you know, almost 60 years old now, I've learned how to actually play with passion and dynamic, you know, which, I mean, I used to feel like, I always thought I was playing with dynamics, and then somebody would show me footage and be like, Jesus, man, I didn't know I was swinging for the fences on, on a song that was so, mellow, but getting more and more of a studio tan, I've learned more, how to control the sound of my drums and without hindering the emotions of being behind the kit, which has been a huge new thing. It's been great. Like I just tracked this song long. This was yesterday. I listened to it. It's like, wow, it's so slamming, but I didn't even break a sweat. His cart, it's changed. It used to be that I would play so hard that I had to then find the sound in my drums because I was crushing them. I was crushing the sound out of them.
Yeah.
And now, wow, play not necessarily lighter because I'm still into baseball bats and all, but not swinging for the floor much. I'm actually hearing tones out of my drums that are mind-boggling, So yeah, it's great.
That's great, man. That's such a great lesson. But I got to say, in your defense, you joined the band when you were 23, right? You joined, I mean, who at that age? I mean, everybody, when I was 23, I like to think I was swinging for the fence. You know what I mean? Like that's what that gig required. But you know what? When I hear you on record, I hear dynamics. I definitely hear it. I hear a lot of skill for a young drummer and your ideas and what you were doing and what you were going for. And and we'll talk about that in a few minutes, but let's just like kind of jump backwards a little bit because you hit me to a tune you played on that I wasn't aware of before Pearl Jam, Course of Empire.
Actually, I wanted to bring this one out because first of all, the guys, the backstory, Chad Lovell, this incredible drummer who kind of hopped over each high school and stuff. He had an accident. He fell down, hit his head. He's been rendered pretty much incapacitated for a number of years. Really bad accident. And, my heart goes out to him. He's an amazing guy. And it's a big loss to the Dallas music community that he can't participate. He's still kicking and he's still fighting. He looks great. But these guys told him that had left the band. And David Castell, a producer who's also be involved in some other stuff that we talk about, he called me up and asked me if I was available. He used to work, Matt Chamberlain used to do his sessions. And then Matt went off with Edie Brickell, the New Bows, and said Dave would call me up. And so he called and asked if I wanted to do this session. And I was like, sure. I was gung-ho, I was young and I'd never been involved with, it's the first song that I played on that ended up on a record. And it was the first time I played to a click track. And it was the first time, that I went into a studio shutting someone else's drums and had, put on that spot of like, this is next level. You can't come in and just kind of wing it. It's like somebody's spending money, not your money, and you got to nail it. And so all those things, and Castell, great guy, great producer. We had worked together recording other stuff, but this was my first big time, like this is a song we're playing it for it's going on a record. And, and so it was my first opportunity to understand that part of how when you go to the studio and record music, it defines that time period forever and ever and ever, And so it was really exciting. And I was having to pull back my excitement, to play to the click and the push and pull of how a guitar player is driving and the bass player on the back. And it was like all those things.
Yeah.
It was such the experience. And so I'm really proud of the track, And,
you should be. You should be. I'm going to play it in a second. And I got to just say, I have a little history with this band because I when I was with Zildjian, we dealt with Chad and yeah. And I'm trying to think of the other drummer that Michael Jerome. There's another. Yeah. And the band. Yes.
Henry was involved as well. And Kyle. Damn, man, they had quite a few guys that came in and out. But yeah, it was Anthony Headley, Mike Graff, Paul Themrad, Chad Lovell, and Michael Jerome there. That was the core.
Yeah. And you have a part of this band's history, man, which is great because this is a band I feel like really didn't get the sort of love that it deserved, you know, kind of. Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's play this too. Let's play
The best quiet being here I've ever been part of too, which is saying a lot, you know. Yeah, great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Daily hands in the 50-gallon drums in the audience and passed out drumsticks and everybody, if you wanted to break stuff, go ahead. And people did. It was awesome.
I love it. I love it. Well, let's play this too. What do you say, Dave? We'll play this is God's Jig, and this is the first record, the Course of Empire's first record, right? Looks like it. Yeah. All right, here we go. And of course, Dave ABBRUZZESE on drums.
Take a bow, buddy. Man.
It always amazes me how much I remember every single nuance of every single part. And that one was so trippy for me because I was, you know, it was like there was already a part to the song the song was already written. So I had kind of these guidelines to follow. But I still remember I remember on the bass drum stomp part, I remember, the Mike Graff was pushing, and I remember trying to pull him back. And I remember that mathematical calculation of, the click track's getting away from us. And I got it, and trying to catch back up and pull it back in without it speeding or slowing down in the next part. And all that. I remember the way the room smelled, pretty
That's
awesome.
masterful, man. And you must have been about 20, 21 when you recorded that, right?
I guess it was 89, maybe 2019, 2021, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. First time played to a close, the first time in a studio, like, shit, man. That's like, yeah. That's
sort of it. Actually, FMU, they had a big sound stage for their video and arts department, and we used that room. So it was like this, Dave Pastel had a Mitsubishi mobile truck, and it was awesome. And it was pre-digital, so very cool,
Yeah.
I love
When records sounded like records, Yeah, absolutely. So
I do love recording the digital too. I love sitting down and letting my freak, just reacting to the song, and then going in the control room and sitting in front of the computer and having 4 takes of Reckless Abandon to then edit into, it's a whole different animal than creating in a band setting, but I love them both equally. So
yeah, no, that's cool. And I understand that, that is how you record now. So, you got to embrace that and go with it. But just to talk about that. So you were living in Texas at the time. And did you, and I kind of skipped ahead a little bit. Did you take lessons as a young drummer? Did you have like formal lessons, or you self-taught, or?
No, there was a guy named Reagan Robbins. He was a tritom player at Mesquite High School. And I saw, when I was in 7th grade, I saw a picture of Mesquite High School. And he was standing there when it was like the drum line. And of course, I was the page. And I looked, he was standing there with his hat or the thing and the tritom. And I was like, man, that guy is cool. And actually, I'm walking to and from middle school carrying a contrabass and the blue Muller, or was a Muller Musser percussion cab, case with the little xylophone and shit in it. And I'm having to carry that to and from school every day. And one of my, I had 3 stopping points, and one of them was Winslow's upholstery shop. And I'm standing there one day, and I had talked Mr. Winslow into letting me sweep up, I make a few bucks while I was, resting my shoulder and back from carrying this full-size contrabass. I was doing, and one day there was a ranchero, and there were cases in the back, and on the cases was sprayed the name Reagan Robbins. And this is a guy that I had been talking to, every day for a couple months. And I was like, you're that guy. And I remember his drum tape. And he had a gig that night, and he invited me along to be his drum tech. And it was at a VFW, and it was a country band. They were playing like ZZ Top and stuff. And that was really, he was like my first formal lessons guy, because the lessons he was giving me were more about life and use it. And you should check this out. You should check this out. And then he let me get up, and at 12, 13 years old, I was playing LaGrange, in front of the VFW crowd, cup crowd. So that goes to the life lesson. Then there was Terry Parker, another guy who, lived down the street, and he taught me how to play my Sharona, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it all started with a flip top record player and Birthday by the Beatles.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I always had this ability to visualize drummers, maybe it was from watching Buddy Rich and Gene Krupa and those guys, and Louis Pelson and Ed Shaughnessy, seeing him on the Tonight Show, getting to see them play. It became a thing where I could put on headphones and close my eyes and see the drummer playing. And so I could emulate that. And it just slowly turned into, all of a sudden there were drums in front of me, and I was I was like, wow, I'm doing this. I got, you know,
Yeah.
it was like in junior high school, the teacher, she was a flautist and she really didn't, she was like, that drums, schmums, whatever, do whatever you want, which were a blessing and a curse because I would just sit back there and make shit up, whatever it was, you know. But so I wasn't spending my time working with the Mel Day book or any of these things, and I kind of wish I had. But I mean, I'm not going to complain. You know, it worked out. So.
It all worked out just fine, Dave. Just fine.
Yeah. It was most hits and bottom this way. You say, you know.
And I say this. I definitely heard some Bonham influence, but I would never imply that you were, what I loved about that tune was like what you were playing, the bass drum pattern you were playing. And I know the song, there was probably a drum part that you sort of adhered to, but
based on Chad's part, and Chad was a great lover of all things Kurt Bunn as well. So
yeah.
Rubber, great. Love a pleasure, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, a couple of quick comments from people watching. Our old friend Pat Brown, formerly of Promar, says hello, and he's watching. Yeah, Pat's an old friend, great guy, and hi to Pat. And also,
Pat saved my wrists.
Oh,
Pat Promar put in the effort. Easton put in a big effort on developing sticks and balancing them right to try to release the shock because I was going through so much trauma. And Pat and Promart said, no, we won't have that. It makes you good. And they put in the effort and kept me on wood. And I mean, bless his heart and Herb and all of them, they were just, but Pat especially, terrific. It was just like, no, you're a drummer. You eat drumsticks. Come on, let's go. So they did. And we tried this part longer, that part longer, this. And then one day it was just like, wow, these are them. And yeah. So yeah, I'm eternally Pat. Very special.
Good job, Pat. Yeah. Well, I have to read another comment from a really good dear friend of mine, Bill Gibson, who's the drummer for Huey Lewis and the News. And Bill said to me, ask Dave if he introduced himself to me in the early 90s. Whoever it was, he said he was Pearl Jam's drummer. So I don't know if you saw Huey Lewis somewhere and introduced yourself to the drummer.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they did a lot of work at the site, the same place we recorded Verses. And San Rafael, it might have been around there somewhere. Because I do recall, but the time's kind of a blur. I remember everything behind the kit, but everything else around it was so special. And if I did run into him, it would have been a monumental moment because I was a huge fan. What a solid drummer.
Yeah.
I remember those videos, just being glued to those videos. Any video that showed a drummer drumming with passion, like Liberty DeVito or Hiram or, Tunkel, any of those guys, man, I want to play I want to look that smooth behind the kids,
I know. You just named three guys that just epitomize that, effortless groove, make it look and sound so easy. Yeah.
Mr. Bowden as well. I mean, we've become friends and oh my God, his work back then, it was just that grin on his face. He loved what he was doing. And I just remember those drummers were the ones that I saw him play, and it was like everything about the style, the pleasure, the passion, their kits, all of it was just like, man, I want to be.
Yeah, I love it. I love that you had that, that kind of same spark that all of us had as young drummers, and then. When you were elevated to this point in this band that was just, I keep saying it, but I mean, all of us who were around during that time remember how gigantic you guys were. And I'm going to get to the one time that I remember meeting you in person and having a brief conversation. You were just such a down to earth drummer guy. You weren't putting on this vibe of well, man, I don't know what size snare drum. I don't know what size sticks I use, man. My tech takes care of that. I mean, there was none of that bullshit. It was, none of that.
I didn't have time for that. It was like you're working so hard. And it was the way I was raised, it was like, is an opportunity to just be myself. And the only way I was going to provide it was to do it honestly. And I also knew, that there's an ebb and flow to this sort of stuff. And, the only way I could deal with it was just be honest with it, emotionally honest with it, open, whatever. But the biggest thing to me was to never put stuff on other people, just to take it in and enjoy the exchanges and the moments. And yeah, I mean, it was incredible.
Yeah.
It's still, well,
Yeah, I know. I can see that. I can see that you're so positive. I mean, I love that about you. But I want to talk about Matt Chamberlain, who I texted the other night, by the way. He said to say hello to you. I said, I'm finally having Dave on, because I've had Matt on, a while back. And I said, I'm finally having Dave on. And he said, oh, I guess he's rehearsing with Paul Simon right now in New York, Matt Chamberlain. But he said to say hello to you. But so fast forward to 1991, and you're living in Dallas or Texas, outside of Dallas. And
I was in Dallas.
in Dallas, and you get a call from Matt saying there's a band looking for a drummer.
Well, it's interesting, and there's so much history after as well. I mean, a band that Matt was playing with, 10 Hands, they're the guys that another song you're going to play from Green Romance Orchestra. That's my band in that group.
Yeah.
Was Matt's or Edie Brickell.
Okay.
Yeah, one of them. I mean, that band and Mike Dillon. The unbelievable, incomparable Mike Dillon was part of 10 Hands also with Matt Chamberlain and then Earl Harvin. And then Mike went on to do amazing things at Rickety Jones, all this other stuff. And I produced his band, Harry H. But the Experience, which was just such a treat for me. But yeah, so I was in Dallas. I played a gig with my band, Dr. Tongue, and it was a place called the Main Bar. And Mike Dillon and Matt wandered in, and Matt had gotten the offer to play on Saturday Night Live with D. Smith, and he was on like the 2.5, 3-week-long Pearl Jam showcase tour. And he was like, doing the Saturday Night Live gig was more in line with what his career goals were. That he jumping in a van and was heavily in debt, had no promise of anything, which is what Pearl Jam was at the time. And so they were sitting there talking about, Matt was like, I need to find somebody to recommend to these guys when I tell them I want to go do this other thing. And Mike said, we were playing, and Mike said, well, what about Dave? And Matt was like, look. So on the way home from that gig, I had a Ranchero, and I hit a bump going through a green light, and my snare drum, this Rogers Dynasonic or whatever, it bounced right out of the back. I mean, it bounced out of the back, and I slammed on my brakes, and the snare went skidding past me, and I was like, "Oh no, oh no, oh man!" I just need to get gas and eat breakfast. How am I gonna push the snare? I was bummed out, and I got home, and it was the first time I unloaded my drums and I stacked them up like a Christmas tree in the corner of the dining room, instead of setting them up in the Samford garage where the band practiced, And I just kind of thought maybe that was it. Maybe I've gone as far as I can with this. I don't know how I'm going to pick snare, and this and that. My parents are lawyers. I don't know how, I need to get in this business I've been at it for, my whole life. And so I thought, I don't know. The next day I get up and my phone was being turned off. So, I mean, literally, I'll be honest. I sold my last joint. I sold my bicycle, dug through the couch. It came up with $1.25, had enough money to go walk down the street, pay my phone bill. So I walked down the street. I'm coming back, and I'm like, I don't even have my last joint anymore. My bike's gone. My drums are dead. I'm coming up the steps and I hear my phone ring. It's like, oh, good. At least my phone's on. I went inside, answered it, and it was Matt. And it was Matt saying, hey, you want to check out this gig? I was like, okay, well. So that night I had a radio show. Chris Diamante and I had Chris and Dave's Music We Like show. People would call in and ask us to play music. If we liked it, we'd play it. If we didn't, we wouldn't. And I went in, and Chris and I dug up, all this Green River and Mother Love Bone, and it was just like, yeah. Well, yeah, we're on the air going, ooh, nah, that's not for me. Yeah, I was looking at the Sly Stone and Zappa, and I was more in that vein of things, and Chris said, well, have you ever been to Seattle? And I was like, no. He said, well, free trip to Seattle. Well, yeah, you're right. So that's kind of how that came about. And I got the beat at the guys do it, and I was like, man, I am not feeling it. I didn't get through any of the songs. I was like, I don't know, if this is something that you mess with. So I called the management office and talked to Eddie and Jeff. And my question was, do you guys want me to learn this music as it sits? And if they were to say yes, I was going to tell them that I wasn't the right guy for the that's just that. And they said, no, just come up and we'll just jam. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And that's what we did, and it just worked. They let me take the songs because I only had notions of the songs. I never sat and wrote down or memorized, or I just had notions up. So over the course of a week, we jammed a lot, and then we played a few songs here and there, and it just felt good, and then it was a couple of weeks later that we had our first gig.
So you came in there and they pretty much said to you, you have the gig if you want it. Once you played with the band and jammed,
Yeah, not really. We were there for a week, and I was supposed to leave on Saturday, and on Thursday, I asked Eddie, I said, so, I'd spend a day with each guy in the band, and then, it was like before rehearsal, we'd meet up and have coffee or go for a walk, whatever each person's trip was, I'd be a part of the trip. And Thursday, I asked Eddie, I said, so when I leave here on Saturday, am I going to know if I have a gig? And Eddie said, oh, I think there's a couple of the guys that are going to check out. And so I went back to the hotel and called my girlfriend, said, yeah, I'm going to head out tomorrow. Because I didn't want the gig if somebody else didn't get it. I didn't want to be that guy.
Yeah.
So the next morning I woke up on Friday and I called the management office to tell them I wanted to change my ticket. And Kelly answered the phone, told me to hold on, band's manager. And then he got back on the phone and said, how long is it going to take you to go to Texas to get your kit? And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah. So it was like that, But it did lay this dynamic that I was never really Eddie's first choice,
Yeah.
It laid that dynamic kind of hung out, and
but maybe,
it was interesting.
Yeah. Do you think, Dave, maybe that it almost like, I don't know Eddie, but maybe he just needed a little push. Like maybe it was you making that call and saying, well, listen, man, no,
I wasn't Eddie's. No, I wasn't, Eddie as anti this and anti that as he appeared to be, he, to his credit, it was incredibly good at marketing himself. And, he worked to be successful very hard,
Yeah.
Even, being on magazine cover saying that, I don't want to be a magazine cover. Part,
I know. Yeah.
So it was one of those things. He knew, and I, Krisha Ojiro, who was one of the people that worked at the management office. She was awesome. She even said that when I walked in, it was more like, he seems like he should be with the Alice in Chains guys more than these Pearl Jam guys. No. That out was long hair, smoked cigarettes, all that stuff. And yeah, I was the, Jeff was vegan, and you know what I mean? It was like, yeah. the that with the Cortez Empire guys, I'd come into rehearsal and they would be like, wow, someone smells like yeet. Hey.
Oh man. But I have to think, I don't know that anybody, in that circle would ever, in hindsight, admit this or acknowledge this, but you added a dynamic, you know what I mean? The fact that you were a different kind of drummer, that's what, I mean, like your feel and yeah, that's
You heard old videos and the old vibe too. I mean, definitely I was a drummer. See, and that was something I noticed when I got fired from the band. The question was why, and I was always like, I don't fucking know, And but then when I finally saw a video of them playing. I saw a video of actually Jack or Dave Cruzen playing with the band, or him playing with Candlebox, and I was like, huh. And then I watched how Jack was playing with Pearl Jam, and then I watched how Matt was playing with Pearl Jam, and I was like, aha. Whether it was Eddie or what, it's hard for me to think it was Stone or Mike or whatever because of the chemistry we had on stage. But the difference was I pushed the band, It was like my energy behind the kit was very forceful. Whereas Dave Cruzen and Jack and Matt were just back there, I mean, it's not credible. I mean, Dave's incredible. Jack was one of a huge influence in my drumming growing up,
Sure. Yeah.
Because they did for Matt with the Chili Peppers and 11 was his drive was insane. But with Pearl Jam, it wasn't, I noticed, one of the biggest things playing with Pearl Jam was the tension of Stone really pushed the beat and Jeff played way on the back of it.
Yeah.
And so there were really cerebral thing that I had to pay attention to, which was, due to allow to have basically like who gets the ball for this section of the song.
Exactly.
And so I would pay attention to that. And the way Stone moved, I would, when he would come up with an idea, the way his body moved when he'd show it to me, when I'd start playing, if his body changed, then I would change so I found out how to do something that kept him moving the same way he did when he just was him playing on his own. And so, I mean, there were it was the most cerebral approach to playing I'd ever experienced was playing with those guys because of the dynamic of who gets the ball, Yeah. I mean, who is it? Well, it's still important to let Jeff have some of the verse movement, the way his feel was, but then to let Stone, his energy take it into the bridge or whatever, which would lead into the chorus, which then I would take over. And all the intricate little splashes and basically the fills on the cymbals were there to color and drive and attach Stone's parts to Jeff's parts. So it was intense. It was really, really, really cool. But there are all those things I learned from watching Matt and Mike drive 10 hands through the back window of Club Dada in Dallas. I mean, that was something, all these great North Texas drummers. I mean, and all the great Booker T, the Arts Magnet School. Al Emmert, the great, his name's leading to my head right now. Oh, Aaron Colds. I mean, these guys, monsters, and all came out of that same group of musicians. And I mean, cutting my teeth when I was underage outside of Club Dada, staring in the window that was behind the stage, getting Locke, Matt, and Mike, and those guys play. It was like they were masters, Still are.
Great. Yeah. Great education. Yeah. Man. Well, Dave, you just described that perfectly because listening to these songs again, I hadn't really listened to these songs in a real deep sort of dive in a while. And the way you and Jeff play together, though, I mean, I guess I would never, listening to it, sense any sort of, I won't say tension, but I think you guys really naturally gelled. I mean, and whatever formula you came up with, because you can feel Jeff pulling it back a little bit, and you you could sit back there with them, but you still were able to like drive the band. Like it never feels like it's dragging in any way. I mean, it still propels, you know?
Because like during like verses was one thing because we rehearsed the ideas of the songs. Then we went in the studio and made them songs. And in that one, it was like when we were in the studio, I mean, a lot of that record was just me and a click track, and that's it.
Yeah.
Because those guys didn't play well to a click track. We tried it once, and Stone ended like 3 beats ahead of me, and Jeff and Mike were a beat and a half behind me. So most of that record that when we used click tracks, it was just me and the click track with just a touch of those guys in there. And when I would play, it'd be like, okay, I play the song, and then those guys would fix and tighten up their parts, Whereas on Vitalik, more we were creating these things on stage at sound checks, and then we go into the studio and just go for it, And so there wasn't as much time, with verses. I was taking DAT tapes home and studying how could I bridge these gaps and how could I make this song not sound like this other song, all those sorts of things. Whereas with Vitalogy, it was a different energy that was coming from being in different phases of the tour that we were taking into the studio with just the idea. It was like, songs like Tremor Christ, it was damn near a one and done song. Yes. Stone played this riff. We played for a second. It was like, wow, that's cool. And then he started over, and that's the track. What I played to is the track on the record, So it was like, things were happening a lot different on Vitality than on Versus.
On Versus. And talking about that a little bit, was a lot of that like, is that how Brendan O'Brien liked to work? Did he like to use a click track? And was he, well, I guess my question, because he's such a legendary producer, and I've never actually talked to somebody who's worked with him, but like, did he offer input to you on things as far as playing? Okay, it sounds like you have a great story.
He played me like a middle. Brendan, wow. I mean, what a champ. He unbelievable. First of all, the sounds he got to tape were pretty much the same, which is incredible. We would finish a song. I would finish a drum track at, start at 10:30. My drum track begun at noon, 1 o'clock. And then after dinner, we'd listen to the mix. I mean, that's, they were there. He was incredible. But he was really great and I've never gotten to sit down as a more mature adult and say, hey, I want to know. But like, for example, on Rearview Mirror, I got up, finally, all these, blown out tendons and all this shit. And it's 10 in the morning. And, some songs like Daughter, the difference between the album version and the live version was what I wanted on the record, but it was too much. There was too much going on. So we would, he would say something like, why don't you try your Ludwig, that badass 26-inch kick drum. We'll put you in the tile room and just set up what you need. So next thing you know, I'm in the tile room with a 26-inch kit, a snare drum, 1 floor tom, a ride, 2 crashes, a splash, and this not 13 cymbals and, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And a couple of the songs were done that way. Rearview Mirror was one of them, where it was just me in this big tile room with my old Ludwig kit, stripped way down, with floor tom, snare drum, 2 cymbals, a ride, no China, no, just small setup. And and zone mics, so it was just slamming and a click track. So I'm in there. And we played the song through, and at this point, it's like I'd sit down, I'd give it my all at the get-go because I knew I didn't have a whole lot to give. There was going to be a point where my hand said, fuck you, and I didn't want to record the record in a stick between that finger and middle finger or take in the hand, to be alive. So we finished the first track and the click track that's still going, and it's so loud in my cans that every time it clicks, my ear just becomes click, So it's pounding. So we hit the last note, boom. And I'm sitting there and I'm waiting, tape to stop, click track to stop, and Brendan to say, "I was Tiller, you got it," or whatever. So I'm sitting there and I'm breathing heavy, and the click track's still going. And I'm like, And he doesn't cut off the click track. He just cuts in and he says, "Yeah, Dave, let's take it again. Just give me a little more."
Oh my God.
And I'm like, "Give me a little more." I mean, and he knew that I didn't hold back. He knew I was swinging for the fences,
Yeah.
And I'm like, what do you mean? Want more washy bride cylinder? What, give you a little more? Would it push the click? What do you, I want specifics. But in the meantime, I've got this click track pounding in my head.
Oh man.
And he's not answering me. And I'm like leaning over in the scare mic, turn the fucking click track off. Nothing still going. And I said, "So what do you mean?" He said, "I just give me a little more." Okay. So we roll it again. And this time I've got a little bit of anger under me and I am just boosh, 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 going Dutch. And and so I'm giving him more and I'm really digging shit out of my drum set. And boom, last note, pow. And the end of that song is ferocious, It's at it's a 60s note, some kick drum and everything, So we stop. And again, it's a 26-inch kick. So I've done an extended wooden beater, which embashed my shin bone as well. And so boom, we stop. I got torn blisters on blisters, and the crick track is still pounding in my head. And I'm yelling at the snare mic, "Please turn the fucking crick track up." And so finally he cricked back, "Hold on a second." And click track's still going. I'm just sitting there, "You me." I said, yeah, just one more time. Just give me a little more.
Oh my God.
Oh man. I had no idea I was losing my mind. So at this point, and I'm in the aisle room, sweating my ass off. My hands are primming up from the blister juice. It was gnarly. So I played with hate in my heart, not for Brent, it for the, just whatever. It was like every bit of anger, angst, and don't forget, I was a 24-year-old rock star at this point. How dare someone yet like this? We're paying you, mister, So anyway, I cut my, hit the last note of the song, and I knew I got it. I knew I got it the first time, but I hit the last note of the song, punched the hole through my snare, hurled my stick, grabbed the snare off the stand, stormed out, threw it off a cliff, jumped in my car and left. Jonathan Lubitz, Bob and Luber actually climbed down into the ravine at the site and retrieved that snare drum a couple months later. But yeah, that was my rock dark versus record. But and he knew that he was getting what he wanted out of me by doing that.
Yeah.
And I didn't take it personally. But looking back on it, what a tantrum. But still, that was the Brendan. That was the magic of Brendan. And I respected that so much. I mean, but also, and this is another thing I'd love to ask him. At dinner one night, he knew the next day we were taking on a song called Animal. And at dinner, he made the casual comment, "Well, I hate chima cymbals. I've always hated them." So the next day, in the morning when I got up, going into track Animal at 10 in the morning, I woke up in my room above the garage, went into the studio, and I swapped out every crash cymbal for a china cymbal. Okay, well, my kid have an 8 china cymbal on.
Oh my God.
But I've kind of gotten to ask them because I wouldn't think about these things until later. Hindsight is 2020. But did he want you to do that, or was I really that big an asshole?
Yeah. He didn't know who he was fooling with, man.
Well, or he did, or he knew he will play me like a fiddle.
Exactly.
So that record was, I mean, that record was so natural, and the emotions that I felt when I woke up in the morning, went to bed at night, are the emotions in the music. I hear them when I listen to an album.
Yeah.
And really pleased about that. But songs like Elderly Woman, the Small Town, or whatever it's called, I'd come back from Seattle, took a weekend off, came in, and Eddie was listening back to an acoustic guitar and a vocal. And I came in when it was halfway over, stood in the back of the controller listening. And I kind of sheepishly said, mind if I have a go at that? And Eddie was like, yeah, go ahead. So I went in, and 2 passes later, that's the track. It's on the record. No click track, and I just played what I felt,
Yeah.
But that, to me, I mean, that's how we were as a band, that I could sit down and play that song, just an acoustic guitar and a vocal, no click, already recorded, and sit down and lock into it and just play what I felt should be there. And the timing of the part, I mean, it's a flamboyantly busy cymbal part. I mean, it's, 6, 9 rolls all over the fucking place on the cymbals, but they, if the timing would have been off a little, it wouldn't have worked at all. And the fact that I went in and, with the crappy AKG open back headphones on, you could barely hear anything, just sat down and played what I felt should be there. And when I listened back, it was the perfect thing. That's the part of Pearl Jam that I never understood why that band had to end in that formation,
Yeah.
It was incredible.
That's magic. Well, I know that wasn't one of the songs we talked about, but should I play a little bit of that? Elderly Woman Behind the Counter in a Small Town? Let's play that. All right, here we go. And thanks for setting up that story. That's a great story. And, I would have never known that this was done without a click. So basically, you came in and overdubbed drums on top of what was already done. Yeah, man. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, this is the second time I ever heard it. Is what we're listening.
To recognize your face, haunting, familiar, yeah. I can't seem to place it. Cannot find the candle of thought to light your name. Lifetimes are catching up with me. All these changes take place. I wish I'd seen the place, but no one's ever taken me. Hearts and thoughts, they fade away. Hearts and thoughts, they fade away. I swear I recognize your breath. Memories like fingerprints are slowly erasing. You wouldn't recall, or I'm not my father. It's hard when you're stuck upon the shelf. I changed by not changing at all. Small town predicts my fate. Perhaps that's what no one wants to see. I just wanna scream hello. My God, it's been so long. Never dreamed you'd return, but now here you are, and here I am. Hearts and thoughts, they fade. Hearts and thoughts, they fade away. 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 Hearts and thoughts, they
Wow. Dave, man.
And you know what? That last big ping on that is a 20-inch symphonic zildjian that I swiped from junior high school.
Ooh. A zildjian made it on a record. All right.
No, that was my first. That was the symbol that I used throughout my first. Yeah, that's on the Even Flow single, re-recorded single. That's on every State 11 Trust, Breath and a Scream, Alone, all the single soundtrack. That's all this huge, really thick, symphonic elitist zildjian people that I snuck under my winter coat because the gig and then had been a day that brought me to Gateway. And I put it up in the only place that it could go, which was in front of the kick drum. And the kick drum crawled, and the cymbal fell off the stage and knocked the kid out. It's unbelievable. Yeah, that cymbal music for years and years. Every time I hear it, they'll ping. It's like,
Oh man. Man, I just gotta give you so much kudos for that tune, man. Your work on that was just so beautiful. Like, you just got so inside that tune. Like,
yeah, it was, that was again Brendan and the band and the music and just where I was at. I mean, we never discussed things. We just did them,
Yep.
and that lent itself to me having formed to be as funky or as out or just to play what I felt should be there for the reasons that I had. They weren't reasons that the band discussed. They weren't the kind of, this is what we look at before in a rhythm section or any of that stuff. I saw Brendan talking with Rick Beato, whatever his name is. And Brendan mentioned, and it was one of the biggest compliments I've ever gotten, which was that, Pearl Jam had a great engine, that I was really busy drummer. Somehow it worked, and that to me, it meant the world to me, to hear him.
Yeah. I don't know, as a drummer, I don't think of you as busy. You know what I mean? I think of you as like playing what the songs need, and I think like playing splashes and fills and things like, I don't know. I don't think of that as like Carter Beauford. I've heard people say, oh, he's really busy. It's like, well, no, he plays like these parts that support the songs, like that's the shit that drummers do.
It's a craftsmanship thing,
Yeah, exactly.
Their song Immortality, which was, to me, the song itself, just, it could have easily just laid there flat, and no fault of Jack or Matt or any, but when I hear that song played by them, all the nuances, the hi-hat open, the parts. I mean, to me, a hi-hat, it's such an integral part. Like, if you just hitting it a couple of times, I mean, there's a swing that comes in and those little elements missing make it like the song. It's, to me, it's like they're listening to a terrible cover band where it's like, the drummer skills or their ability to hear and recognize or appreciate the nuance get kind of lost,
Yeah.
Yeah, their songs drove me nuts, to hear another drummer playing them, because to me, it's like there were, everything that I did, everything, I knew why I did it,
Yeah.
and it's weird to consider party.
I understand it. They're like your kids, I get it, man. It's yeah. I get it. Well, so I got to jump backwards because you mentioned our friend, the great Jack Irons, and I told this story when I was talking about promoting the show. I went to see Jack with 11 when they were opening for you guys in early 1992, and had heard of the band. I'd heard of Pearl Jam. I was familiar with you guys, but I mean, it was right when things were starting to happen. And my recollection, and I don't know if you probably won't remember it any better than me, Dave, because it was a long time ago, but it was I remember it was a small club called Axis on Lansdowne Street in Boston. It's right by Fenway Park. And I remember going in and brought Jack some drumsticks or something. And it was like just mayhem, pandemonium. And he said, yeah, this band Pearl Jam, they're blowing up and, they're huge or whatever. And I wanted to meet you. And I think he said either you guys weren't there yet because they were supporting you guys, or you were on the bus or something. And it was like, I'll try to see if you can say hello to him after the show or something, which I never got to do. But I just remember that was my first kind of inkling of what was going to happen with you guys. And then I feel like it was like literally a couple of months later and you guys had and so I got to you've talked about this, I know, but what was that like for you to just go from paying your last $1.25 to pay your phone bill to being like in the big, like the only thing, okay, and I'll shut up after this, but the only thing I can remember in my history, like working in the business, was about 5 years or so before that when Guns N' Roses hit and they went from being like a Hollywood strip. I was living out in LA at the time and they were like, one of many bands on the strip, and then they just exploded. But you guys it was even bigger somehow when you guys did it. It was just because you created this movement with all these other bands. So
Yeah, well, it was intense on so many levels to it, because on the one hand, I went from being, just this drummer guy to being this successful drummer guy, but my relationship to the music and the people and my friends, and none of that had changed. So it was more of a perceived notion of the changes that were happening. But we were working so hard, and to me, getting the parts right every night. I mean, I still maintain that I can probably count the number of mistakes I made on stage on both hands over all those years. It's like I took it was the philosophy of like Neil. Whenever I went and saw Rush play, he would do everything you expected of him. He would do, but he would do these little things when you didn't expect it that just were electric.
Yeah.
And so me in the music, I had the room to play what was expected, especially after the Versus record, but then to add in other things too. And, but at the time when things were blowing up, I mean, we were only paying ourselves $400 a month, and we had sold millions of records because we didn't want to be debt, Yep. When we took a break for our first break after a year and a half or more touring, we went in, we came up with the song ideas. We went to the site with Brendan. We did all that without permission because we paid for it, and we didn't have a record deal. We just had a handshake. We didn't sign a record deal till, So we decided, we weren't seeing our bank accounts were getting huge. We were paying back the record company for all the money they spent on that first album and the Jeremy video and all that shit.
Yeah.
So, but we were playing so hard, and we weren't a party band. So it was like, day off, I was at the library. I was happy that you were, playing College Town, because I could go to the college library and, stuff like that, and discover the joys of coffee and thing,
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
But college good.
I didn't. I zoned that. I didn't fuck with that. Plus, I mean, days off to me were a pain in the ass because that's when I noticed how much my blisters hurt. When I played every day, okay, whatever, the pain will motivate me. But a day off, I'd wake up and had gotten enough sleep to be like, "How? Damn it, this hurts." But plus back then it was so cool because writing letters. It wasn't email. So we were writing, people still show me a letter that I wrote or a postcard that I sent her, and it was just a totally different time touring than people have now, and no phones up in the air.
Yeah.
So it was really, being present was real easy. And so in that, I remember there was a time where all of a sudden interviewer questions were like, how are you dealing with the pressure? And it was like, all of a sudden it's like, the biggest pressure I felt was the pressure to answer that question about pressure. It's like, I don't feel if my monitor system getting huge and my drums sound like guns going off on the stage, I love it. And it's getting bigger but it was, and also the band dynamic, things were happening so fast that we were all getting tighter to deal with it. So, there was so much personal growth, musical growth and experience that, that was one level of it. Then there was the other, which was, all of a sudden people wanting stuff or like not being able to really relate to my friends back home and envy and weird stuff that was coming, So there was those levels of things, but, luckily, I mean, in the biggest way, my parents were fans of the band. So that kept me really grounded because they were always interested in what we were doing. And, they would come out whenever we were in town. They'd come out wearing matching Pearl Jam shirts. And
Oh man, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
we might, walking my dad around the stage and remembering the first experience I had where, I was telling him how things work and showing him this and that and, introducing him to Kerry, our monitor engineer, explaining the console and the mics and this, and he was looking at me like, what the hell? And finally I said, what's going on? You look at me, he said, when the hell did you learn all this stuff? Oh, I said, Dad, what the fuck do you think I was doing in my room all these years, dude? Probably boom. Like there were so many things going on that were based in reality that I didn't, and the fact that we were technically a sober band, we weren't doing illicit drugs, occasionally there'd be a joint or whatever, but it was like, there was too much work going on.
Yeah.
To be out of we were very focused and, physically I was tearing myself up to the point where, I mean, there was a point where it was after every show, I was 15 minutes laying down over a big drum of ice water with my arms hanging in it. So I couldn't stand it, and it's just, yeah, it was intense. It was just intense and it was a lot of work, but it wasn't what I always dreamed of because there was a reality. It wasn't a dream anymore.
Yeah.
But, and like I mentioned earlier, you being present and striving to enjoy every moment of it by being honest with myself about it and all that. I mean, I wish I had more social skills to be able to bridge the gap between the personalities of the band. But at the time, it was just hunkering back. There was a lot of hunkering back.
Yeah, man. And there's absolutely, and there's so much to take away from what you just said, Dave. Like, first of all, so important what you said that I think many people understand this now in terms of how the business works, but probably not enough people realize how a band like you guys are out there playing like sold out shows in front of 20,000 people, but you're making $400 a month because you're paying back the record company for all the money they spent making the record and promoting it. And people think that like, I know I used to talk to people who didn't have a clue and they think that from day one, you're putting all this money in your pocket.
Right. I mean,
Thought that, you $50 CD, that meant the band got $15.
yeah.
And they didn't realize, we made our deal on the 10 record, we made 88 cents after recoupment, 88 cents per record. And that 88 cents went back towards paying off the $250,000 debt.
Yeah.
Before we even saw time of it.
Yeah.
And then when we did our 88 cents per record, out of that came our insurance, legal, management, crew, blah, blah, blah. So we weren't seeing, we were getting a dime a record. You know what I mean? It was like,
Yeah.
oh, I mean, t-shirts bought the house. That's for sure.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly. Yeah, thank God for merch, man. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and all those kinds of things were so important, and the work, like the fact that, I mean, it's a great job to have, no doubt about it, being a drummer, being a musician, but it's hard work, man. You're out there, and I got to think those couple of years of like when you joined the band in late 91, 92, 93, it's probably like a blur in many ways because it was just like nonstop working. You guys were nonstop.
Oh, that's a trip. I can hear it still. It blows my mind every time. If I hear a crowd come up on stereo or on YouTube or whatever, I know if it's a Pearl Jam crowd. I just recognize it,
Wow.
That stuff always blows my mind. Always.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and without a doubt, we had the best audience. I mean,
Yeah.
they were.
I saw you play. The second time I saw you was at the Lollapalooza Festival in 92 at Great Woods outside of Boston. And I didn't get to meet you that day, but I met Chad Smith for the first time. I was with Joey Kramer of Aerosmith. And so, riding Joey's coattails, you sort of got to the front of the line usually. And if I had pretty good cred with Zildjian, but Joey had we drove in backstage and parked there at his car. But I just remember like you guys by that time, that was like August of 92. And the Chili Peppers might have technically been the headliner on that possibly, but you guys ruled, man. You guys were, and huge. Yeah.
I played for 45 fucking minutes at 2:00.
Yeah.
What a bummer.
but you,
Incredible.
yeah. And that particular year, I remember I think Living Color was on the bill that year, and the Pumpkins, they weren't.
Oh, no, that year it was Lush, then us, then Poor Genius and Mary Chain, and then Ice Cube,
Yeah.
then Soundgarden, from the industry, then Chili Peppers.
Chili Peppers. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was a great, great, great lineup. But I wanted.
Down so well, man. We had such a great time. The drummers on that tour, incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
All great guys, Matt and Chad and everybody were.
And no Rickman with Ministry, which were, we had so many fun times, Yeah, and Chad's such a generous guy, and any new drummer that is just like, come in, you little monkey.
Exactly. Headlock. Yeah.
Not getting to go out with the great Jim Keltner and Booker T and the MD, Steve Cropper, Duck Gunn, Booker T and Neil. Getting sit next to Jim. Jim would come over and he'd say, "Come here, man, my elbow's hurting. My elbow hurts. Give me a fix." He clipped over at C. They told me, "Bring my elbow hurt."
Yeah, I love him, man. I love him. He is the Jedi Master. He really is. Gentleman Jim Kelton. Yeah. But I made a note earlier, just something you said a few minutes ago. It was actually more than a few minutes ago when you were talking about, kind of, I forget the term you used, but it was perfect when you were talking about Jeff holding the, maybe playing a little behind the beat and Stone maybe playing a little in front of it. And I have to think you probably, it's almost like you weren't even aware. I'm guessing you probably developed like a muscle in your brain to compensate for that. And I just love to get your thoughts on that, like where you probably got to a point where you didn't even think about it. You just got into this mode of like, okay, I need to.
Interesting, because I was hyper aware of it, actually. I mean, You know, and even in a live setting, I was aware of it by the way everyone moved. You know, Jeff had his own relationship to the rhythm of the music, and Stone had his. And Stone was always very staccato, and Jeff was always very fluid. And then Mike was just painting in between. You know, and my job was to create the bottom with the, you know, the solid bottom with Jeff that would support his fluidity. You know, he's very fluid bass player, incredibly water, and really, really fucking creative.
Yeah.
And then Stone, I mean, you know, Stone was incredibly demanding. He knew what he wanted out of music, you know, and I knew that when I looked over at Stone and he was just making a stink face and staring at me, it was like, okay. And if I looked over at Stone and he was like, I knew I was, you know, or there was so much intense communication live.
Yeah.
You know, it was strange because, I mean, as far as the band goes, I don't know if I ever even had Jeff's phone number. You know, I mean, as far as our communication on the bus or whatever, I mean, sure, me and Mike and Eric Johnson, our tour manager, and Stone, I mean, the laughter was incredible. But the conversations about the music and what we were doing and all these, what we were feeling, those things weren't happening. So it was on stage where we related and where our hearts touched.
Yeah. Yep.
But when maybe, you know, like our personal experiences with each other, Jeff and Stone had established their relationship in early bands. Mike just wove in and out. You know, he was just fronting and Mike. And Eddie was, you know, just kind of disapproving. You know, that was our dynamic, and it worked until I found out one day it didn't. You know, I was as surprised as in.
Man, well, I want to also, I made a note to talk about, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Dave, but you played at a PASIC, PAS convention, drum convention. No?
Nope. No, I did the Modern Drummer, 1993 Modern Drummer Festival.
Okay.
That was my second clinic. I did Skips in Sacramento as a warm up as to what it was going to feel like. I'd never talked into a microphone before. And then on my birthday weekend, turning 25, I was with Terry Bozier, Rui Bellson, Ginger Baker. He died at the Modern Drummer Festival. And they blew my mind. Not only they brought me out and they gave me the Modern Drummer Award, you know, the up and coming, whatever. And I was like, oh my God, they always just floored me. But then I turned around and realized I was supposed to now talk to 2,500 people with every Vestley plan that they had. Yael and Jimmy had stayed with me the night before, and I had all these grand plans. But as soon as I had this microphone in my hand, all right, let's just wiggle, you know? And yeah, that was an awesome event.
I was there at that for sure. And that must have been where Chris Lombardi, I remember us being in the hotel, and Chris, you were hanging out with Chris Lombardi from Drum Workshop, who's a very dear old friend of mine. And he introduced us. Yeah. And I remember Chris said to me something like, I said, I'd love to meet him, you know, but I don't want. He's like, no, you should meet him. You should meet him. So we were introduced, and I remember you guys were playing cards up in your room, I think, right? In your hotel room. Does that sound right? Am I? Yeah. Yeah. I feel like you came down and you were barefoot and you looked like, yeah. And I said, I work. But you were so cool. You were just, you know, I was like this stranger, this guy who wanted to meet you. And, you know, I was kicking myself. I wish I had met you like a year or two earlier, and I could have said, hey, Dave, how about playing some zills and cymbals? But at the time, I just remember you being this really chill, not what I expected, just like, and not that I expected you not to be, but you were just this very approachable, really kind. You could feel a really kind vibe coming from you, like the fact that all these people wanted to say hello to you, and you felt very. I remember you seemed really humbled to be there, and that was really cool.
Yeah, I was blown away to be there. And, you know, I played Zildjian and Pacey cymbals until I had a budget. All of a sudden, a few days before we went on tour, they said, okay, you go to the American Music and pick out some cymbals. I'm like, what? I went there. The only cymbals they had that I could get 11 of were stadiums. I ended up with 3 19-inch crashes, 2 20-inch Chinas. You know, it was like my dream rock and roll thing.
Yeah.
But I'd never played stadiums up to that point. And then once I met at Frankfurt, I met Wayne Blanchard, and Bill and Bobby Blues. And I mean, instantly it was like, wow, these guys, and we were family, you know?
Yeah.
You know, it was, I mean, I remember sitting at the NAMM convention, you know, Mayhem, and it's me, Bill Zildjian, his wife, and their beautiful daughter when she was little. And we were sitting Indian style in the hallway of the lobby, just shooting the shit while everyone was walking by. So I did that. And it was like everybody that came by, every person was like, so we'll see you tonight at the, you know, Sadie Park. So we'll see you tonight at GW. So we'll see you tonight at this. And I'm just like, and Bill looks at me and goes, so what are you going to do? And I said, I think I'm done Disneyland. So the Palm, you know the Palm door. You know the Palm door?
Yeah.
With Urban Fett?
Yep.
Man,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Sam and Herford, they walked by and I said, let's go to Disneyland. And they were just like, yeah. And Bill was like, no. And so we went, and Disneyland was empty. We rode every ride, and if you're Saturday night, and man, you know, the big night. And we started over there having a gas. I mean, it was just, those guys were so supportive. And the DW guys, same way. First time I went to DW, it was John in that little 1,500 square foot place.
Yeah.
You know, and she walked in, you know, like wood, and he was just a madman. And, you know, and I remember the next time I went out to DW, they had their own exit on the freeway and a plane and 150,000 square foot stop. And I'm just like, wow. And John said, you know, you had a lot to do with this. And I was just like, hit there. It just blew my mind. And not only that, then, you know, I found out that Neil was rehearsing. So I got to go and chat with him.
That's pretty great. And you absolutely, you know, before Zildjian, I worked for DW, and I was in that small space in Newbury Park with John and Don, and Chris had just graduated high school, worked there for a little while before I left. But you're right. You absolutely had a lot to do with them moving to that big space. Absolutely.
You know, they just built me a new kit, and I've used it in the last month and a half, did a couple of records already with it, a bunch of one-off. And I told them, I said, I want my old kit back. I don't want this XY configured, this and that exotic, nothing. I want some tubs, you know? I want those strong personality. When you hit them, you hear the sound come from the whole length of the drum, not just the head, you know? And so they didn't hesitate. Oh, Santa Monica trees, just like the ones you used. And so they built me this kit. And man, I mean, it's been a long time since I've been in love with a drum set. This one showed up, and it's just the meatiest. It sounds like my old Ludwig kit. It's just tubby, but you know, it still has that DW. Like, okay, anyone can tune any one of these drums. Or put the kit back together. It's been perfect, you know.
All right. I hope you enjoyed part 1 of Dave ABBRUZZESE. Stay tuned for part 2. Thanks for watching and listening. See you soon.